once again, thanks to Rick and Mike and the whole brand storytelling team. What an amazing event. It's its fourth year. It's only getting bigger and better. And can't be more excited for the new people who are here this year. I'm sure you'll go back and say this is the best conference you attended all year. So thanks again, Rick and team. Yes. So hi, I'm Louis Henderson, president and founder of Purpose Content. I work with Hollywood creatives to create branded content, brand storytelling, and original content for all types of distribution platforms. My friend here, and he truly is a friend, we've known each other, 20-something years, is Ben Silverman. Ben is the chairman and co-CEO of Propagate Content. Previously, he had worked at NBC. He was a co-chairman for NBC Universal. At the same time, he started a little company called Reveille that he sold. What year was that?
Started it in 2002 and sold it in 2007.
And then went on to create Electus, also with Barry Diller. And then most recently has partnered with his old colleague, Howard Owens, and formed Propagate. We first met when we were both at William Morris, and Ben was based in London. Actually, the first time we spoke, it was an assistant conversation when you both and I were working on desks. I think we set up drinks for our bosses, and then we set up drinks for ourselves. The rest is history. But
when the boss is out, it's like the best time to set that up.
That's what you got to do. But Ben was positioned in London, and he was at the forefront and had the foresight to understand the global format business. And what I meant by that is he was the first guy in London to see properties that were working overseas and identify those rights, capture those rights, package those rights with great talent, and bring them back over to the U.S. One of those happened to be The Office. There was always Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, Big Brother, Survivor, just to name a few. So, and when I say that he was at the forefront of this, he truly created that business model. When he came back to the U.S., he worked in our LA office for a little bit, but that's when he jumped off and started Reveille. So at the same time, Propagate now is definitely a successful production company. Currently has unscripted projects, Lore with Amazon, November 13 and Haunted for Netflix, unscripted projects, Blood and Treasure for CBS, and Charmed for the CW. So he's an extremely active guy in this space. Since I've known him, he's worked with brands. I have no idea how many projects you've done. I know you've done over, or at least thousands of hours of content. I know for a fact that 20 to 25% of that probably had brands involved in some capacity. So we're going to kind of kick it off here and talk more about brand storytelling. This is what this conference is called, it's brand storytelling. So when we look at this, for the purpose of this conversation, we're really talking about longer form content that truly engages with the audience, that's meant to, obviously, to draw them in, to entertain them, enlighten them, but perhaps not disrupt them. So it could be some authentic brand play within the content, and maybe it doesn't appear. So we're going to speak mostly about that because Ben and his experience in the global format business, in the state of the industry, he's worked in all facets. He was an agent, he represented talent, he was a producer, still is, but he was also a buyer. So he's worked on every level of the content business, and the whole time he's worked with brands across all of those. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the CMO. So I know in this conference in past years, we've talked a little bit about it's sometimes hard to sell this idea of brand storytelling up to the C-suite. Let's face it, there's a lot of things that are going on, a lot of changes. And there's a lot of people in this room that I know that are really interested in, how can I do this? What information can I provide to my CMO to help them, buy into the process of creating brand storytelling? Ben, what's your advice for CMOs and people in this room who are trying to get the CMOs involved?
Well, I've always found I've looked to, push innovation, which is I have leaned in heavily to the advertising community from all angles of it, both the media buying franchise, which has kind of been the dominant player in my world as somebody who wants to express their content on the largest platforms possible. There's always a moment of negotiation and commoditization, which is been led by the media franchises, either within the companies or within the holding companies. But from the decision-making matrix, it's always taken risk to look at investing in episodic storytelling versus traditional advertising. And that risk tended to fall with a final decision with the CMOs. And I think about the first wave of content that we put together and at Reveille, and it was John Hayes at Amex who really wanted to engineer it and really wanted to drive it and was willing to work patiently with us to kind of build it and share it, but it also was in partnership with Magna, and they helped quantify it for him and provide all of the analysis. And we then wanted to activate and be consistent with the brand. In the case of Amex at that time, we were talking about a small business idea, and the first show we created was called The Restaurant, if any of you remember it, with Rocco DiSpirito, about a restaurateur in New York, and we put it on NBC. And then the next one we did was called Blowout and Sheer Genius, about people cutting hair and in the hair world for Bravo. And John really fought for it and made it happen. We had great success with The Biggest Loser, which I created, in partnering with brands, but Tony Pace at the time at Subway really drove the most innovation and activation as the CMO. And my side of the aisle, which is only really creative led, that's what's driving all of the talent I work with. Most of my partner and co-creator on Jane the Virgin is a Princeton educated playwright who doesn't even really want to think about it. But when I explain how this supports our content, we're able to go meet with Gina Rodriguez, the star of that show, and Jenny Erman, my partner on the show, and communicate with Target, where I flew them in Minneapolis, to help activate a whole sequence about quinceañeras. And that required all those elements. But my point being that our people, and I have partners here from Artists First, which is a management company we just invested in and acquired a stake in November. Their people really want to just tell their stories. And their attitude is, will you help them tell their stories? But they also want to tell your stories. They don't always know what that next story is. And just like identifying The Office was a huge element of, this is really interesting content when I first saw it on air in Britain after the first episode, it was bringing in Greg Daniels, my partner, to realize it for America and to make sure that Scranton wasn't Slough. And then the power of that, if you were a brand, and we activated a lot of brands in that show until Steve Carell came up to me and said, I used to be the FedEx guy. I no longer want to be the FedEx guy. Can you please stop doing this, Ben? And kind of gave a moratorium. But in the initial cycle, we got a lot done. But the overwhelming element of that power also is its legacy and ability. Now it's been discovered by a whole new generation of people through new services and new access points, like one of the early slides Rick put up. And those brands live forever, tied to and connected to that content. But my long-winded statement is, the CMO was like the final check, yes or no, in all of the kind of big gut moves and or things that required real investment. But the collaboration, which is what happens in this room and why I think this is such a valuable conference, is where anything happens, either in my industry, your industry, or where they converge. And our stuff doesn't work unless the writer's awesome, the director's awesome, and the actors are awesome. Any one of those fall off, it fails on the scripted side. And in the alternative side, if we hadn't had Regis host that first cycle of Millionaire and it had been someone else who maybe was more edgy or angular, it may not have reached the heights it reached.
Right.
But also the way we got Millionaire made, the way we got Survivor made, it was all brand partnered. You know, you people may not remember the first cycle of Millionaire, but without AT&T and our Phone a Friend, without McDonald's, because we worked multiple time zones in America, as all of you know, but in the UK where the idea started, there was, and it's coming back again to prime time, by the way, and in the UK where it started, it's one time zone. And so they could partner and do the Phone a Friend with you, and you could pick and play the games, fastest finger, if anyone remembers the show, to get on the show live because it was possible in a time zone. We actually had to activate AT&T and McDonald's to play the game. You would get the games at McDonald's. So there the brand was not only the brand was part of the show.
Right.
You know, and people kind of, you know, were happy to go in and grab their cards because it gave them access. But those decisions were made at very senior levels.
And I remember we were working on projects together too back then, and it seemed like in that same time period, you know, late 90s, early 2000, that there was this onslaught of CMOs just wanting to come to Hollywood.
It was all called TiVo then, right? It was all like the interrupted delivery of Seth, you know, and it still is TiVo, but you know, the a la carte, on-demand, consumer-led revolution of how we all watch, digest, and share our content was too early then, but everyone who had your jobs, or you personally who were there, we knew it was coming. We knew digital delivery was going, and technology and compression was going to drastically alter the universe. It was just the timeline. And what I always found most frustrating, and why I always just keep going and just make this stuff regardless of who, until the right, you know, people come along, was I got really frustrated and always started my own companies with the legacy protection that was inherently part of the DNA of the media franchises and the holding company franchises. And I always felt they were kind of lined up in a death waltz as, you know, they held on to commoditizing the media sales and the value proposition delivered back to the client on the acquisition side. And it was like, well, if you guys don't want to, you know, play a little, and I get it. There was billions and billions and billions of commerce that transact very simply, quickly, with commission structures that are set up and no explanation that needs to happen and no one losing their jobs. And then now, as we see this new onslaught, and why I'm here and really was excited to be here, is Amazon, Apple, and Netflix won't even let me bring a lot of you in. You know, they won't even, you know, they're like building these new.
So further, just on that point, you know, how do you see the business today? So Netflix, Amazon not letting you play with brands. Do you see other opportunities for brands? I've read an article recently about brands, you know, creating IP, owning it, not having to pay for the content, and just, you know, get royalties. What's that business look like, and, you know, what are you seeing?
Well, I think it's all different models, and I got to meet somebody who's speaking to you, Mike Griffin? Mike? Matt, sorry, I got to meet Matt skiing today and heard his, are you Matt? Yeah, different without a helmet, buddy. Couldn't recognize. But I got to meet Matt. Looks good without a helmet and a helmet, just, you know. But I got to meet Matt, and he was talking about what he was doing. And I immediately went over to our managers who are here. I'm like, we got to make a documentary about Matt. Like, that guy's brand, that guy's story will, and he'll tell it to you if you don't know. You know, will has that sustainability and that own engine of and it's a rare thing, you know, it's that can do that. But I always was like, this marketing and these kind of partnerships in these kind of episodic content structures really do pay for themselves very quickly, because the negotiations are all done about the first run of media against them, and the negotiations are all done about their initial airing cycle. And no one factors in the international. You know, some brands aren't international, so it doesn't matter as much. But all the international sales, all the international transactions that happen, they get brand halo. And if they're investors and owners, which we had structured with P&G at the time in some of our deals, because they had that system in the past when they created the soap opera, you know, we made them money on what they invested in. And then we look at how brands value it on that initial cycle, and now we see the show's window. They air on a broadcaster or a cable channel or on Netflix or on Amazon, and then they go to another platform and another platform, and then they live on for years and years and years. So all of that incremental benefit, I would try and explain and lay out, and it got ignored, and I almost feel it just requires more. I hired a woman, maybe some of you know, named Laura Caracoli Davis, who now works at Fox Broadcasting, but she had come out of Publicis, and is that Fox, Publicis, or Laura? But all three. But that really helped us in working with. Sure. I think we both need translation agents, on both sides.
That's a good point. What's different today? You've worked with brands for a long time, but now it is different. We're at this, interesting time. Some could call it chaos. Others look at it as opportunity. For everyone in the room, we look at it as opportunity. But
I think we approached it the first wave just coming to sell you shows. I think that the main engine of Hollywood was, well, you want to buy my show or do you want to buy my movie? Now
because the network didn't.
Yeah, and sometimes it was either because the network didn't, or now the smarter players in my world, we want to listen. The first wave of any meeting I take with somebody in the brand space is to try and learn and then I go into an NDA phase, and then we go deeper and deeper so that we understand what not only the brand wants to accomplish and its DNA and its objectives, but how it expresses them currently, where its deficits are, where its amplification opportunities are, and where a partnership can be built and where jointly there's greater opportunity. And that process has shifted. It requires labor, and intellectual energy, but that's where it needs to go to. And I think a whole wave of people got burnt for basically, buying into pitches, as opposed to campaign ideas or projects that could be multifaceted and multi-platformed.
Yeah, it was definitely more about the screening or being out.
And we know it because when we worked at William Morris, they knew we understood this world in an axis, and every day someone would come in and be like, John flies planes. Can we get him something in a plane? Or there'd be stuff like that. It was just so rudimentary, and it was like, no, we're not in a robocalling business. That's not how this works.
And it sounds like too. I think what's changed is that sometimes it seemed a little bit more competitive. As you mentioned earlier, you're used to working with the different brand partners, agencies, platforms. Seems like there's more of a conversation with everybody taking place now.
Yes, that's fair. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, the collaboration around it. I think there was also. Back then, to get back to it a second, everyone saw that the world was going to change, and they wanted to kind of plant a little flag to hedge against that change. Now that it has changed, I've met a lot of people here over the course of a couple of ski runs, and it was interesting just to see how much time on their social they're spending as brand protectors or expressors.
Right.
And that didn't even exist when we were having those conversations.
But even as a creative, I mean, you're used to dealing with social just to help the market and promote your show, right?
Everything. It's an integrated piece of what we do. But in the first phase, I remember having a meeting when I was chairman of NBC, and Facebook came in, and we discussed an idea, and I said, let's activate this together with them. And there were people then at the company, still owned by G before Comcast took over, who said, no, we can just create a Facebook. No, we'll just do our own Facebook, And there was all this, and there's a sequence of failed efforts by the media companies. Even I can come up with a lot of TV shows where they had people download an app, and why didn't they use Twitter? Why didn't they use the existing marketplace and platform? And a lot of that's about protecting ad sales, who's controlling the dollar and where does it come from, the IP. But I think that's gotten more sophisticated to your point, where everyone's a collaborator now, and people are publishing their content.
I'm going to jump a little bit. Talk a little bit about, a little bit about the format business. If someone is going to, a brand wants to partner with you or go at it alone or work with their other, agency partners, how does a deal like that work? And, what can a brand look to get from it? Can they get rights? Obviously, there's territorial rights. How do you see those deals?
So, they work in obviously many different ways, but, I'll give a recent example. We're partners and produce with Bear Grylls, and Bear Grylls we had on NBC with these incredible shows, and we added a celebrity element, but our main partner in that was Walmart. And part of what Walmart brilliantly did, and Ben Simon was there, who I think is here and helped activate with us, was they got the exclusivity around everything, not only product-wise that may have been shown within the content, but also all of the advertising in their categories. And that's kind of obvious and 101, but when you're thinking about it also from a product development, because Bear was an outdoorsman, and you're competing with Cabela's or Bass, or I think they merged, but you start to recognize, oh, there's a lot more added value. I'm not only building content to express my brand story, and I think the story piece is a key element, and you mentioned at the top, because for me, what we do in the longer formats, like if we're not connecting emotionally to our audience, we're losing them. And whether that's making them feel great, making them feel sad, making them feel connected, that's like an essential element of long form that makes probably a lot of people in this room fans of quality television. And that piece happens in that longer format where you're just investing and getting lost in the journey. But then when you're with your family, because that show's for families, and you want to go away hiking for the weekend, you're leaning into to that store. You're walking into that Walmart and you're buying his collection.
Do you think, though, brands, not that they're looking to make money off of this, but to make their money back? You said you think they have through the marketplace, but literally as a rights holder, help to fund the show.
P&G was always my most aggressive partner in that level, but also at the time I felt they were the smartest about it, because they had seen on their books tens and tens of millions of dollars made from the content investment.
Sure.
And so they had a history of it that made them feel comfortable asking for it. Many brands I had talked to a rep about, do you want to participate in this? You're coming in so early. We normally share that with the network or with the studio, but you're operating almost in a virtual way in that role. But so many of them said, it's too complicated for us. We don't know how to account for it.
Yeah.
We don't know where it lives. We're not a media company. We're a shoe company. Whatever those elements were, forced them to slow down. And I really, when I was running the network at NBC, was able to unlock a lot more, because I could speak to the whole circle. Our conversation, we still need to find where we're expressing it. We need to work together and then go approach the outlets and partnerships we want to seek out to go express that content. There's a lot more willingness in the marketplace because it's shifted so much, and you have all raised your hands and said, we need more, we need better, and we need accountability, and we have new technologies that can measure this, and I want to have transactional data, not just impression data, and all of that has opened up new thinking. But at the end of the day, from our piece, if Gina Rodriguez is invested and she's doing her thing and she's going to win a Golden Globe in that role and become America's sweetheart for the window that she's on air, what is that worth to be, her partner and associated with her?
It's a great segue. So
Yeah.
you mentioned that you have invested in Artists First.
Yeah.
And the role of talent in today's world of just getting programming, whether that be television shows, movies, what have you, on the air. Tell us a little bit about that and how important it is, and what do you think brands can do in relationship with talent to also kind of, not just to show up in their ads, I'm talking about to create content. And is that talent, is it the actress? Is it the director? Is it the showrunner? Where do you see that mix? What's the most helpful?
What is fascinating generationally, there's a new generation of talent. The same way that the television wall has broken down. Alec Baldwin is hosting the match game. All rules are off. Like anybody can do anything, and can be, just getting them into television was a shape shift. That used to be a hierarchy of motion picture over television. The other thing that really opened up was brand. I see Brad Pitt, you see George Clooney, you see the biggest stars in the world as marketers, and that's more traditional brand advertising. But that has opened up the thinking and the generation, and we have a lot of young talent at Artists First too. They grew up putting the sticker on their skateboard. They grew up wearing their brand and identifying themselves through the clothing that they wore as a brand mark. And so they're much more open and available to it. And there's a lot of different ways. Like, we have such an authentic, organic voice in Tiffany Haddish, who many of you may know. And she liked Groupon, and she connected to Groupon, and Groupon connected to her, and that activated. We have Kenya Barris, the creator of Blackish, who's a brilliant voice. He's also doing the new Bewitched for ABC as well. And brilliant, brilliant creative force. He wants to work with everybody here. He's looking for guidance, how to bring his brilliance.
To align like the brand purpose with what the talent is looking to do as well, and try to find those connections and then look for the story?
He wants to be as creative as possible and have as much impact as possible and have his work be seen by as many people as possible.
But will he work with any brand, or is he going to, does you think, and I'm not asking you.
I think it's all about what it is. Like, I don't know if he, what he feels about different parts of the world. I know he cares a lot about family.
Right.
I know he cares a lot about women. I know he cares a lot about fashion. I know there's like all these sections of his life that he touches in the stories he tells, and he uses comedy to do so. I don't know if he's going to be the guy to do a pickup truck. He's got a set of things that he does brilliantly, and you want to activate around that, and he can activate around it. And he communicates to a diverse audience in a very real way that is hard for a lot of brands to do.
Right.
And I think that's another thing that we've done really well in television, and I'm now seeing unleashed by marketers in a beautiful way, which is we have promoted a lot of diverse voices, like creating Ugly Betty and Jane the Virgin, and bringing America and Gina to the masses, introducing bilingual characters, doing the kind of activation that Kenya did in Blackish, showing people represented has really proven to be good business, and I'm seeing it throughout the advertising landscape as I see traditional advertising reflect more and more society on the whole.
Congratulations on the spinoff to Jane the Virgin.
Very excited about my
very
spinoff.
good. All right, we have
a
2
spinoff
minutes
on
left.
Jennifer's. It's a holy grail thing. See, if you'd been in the first one, you get the third one for free.
You can see we have tons of questions. This has been a great conversation, but I don't want Rick to kill us. But one thing I do, we have 2 minutes, I'm good?
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about something different that we're starting to see appear, and it's through multiple different platforms, Amazon. That is, the whole idea of creating content that is driving an actual purchase. So the purchase funnel has always been the guide, right? But now you can go from awareness to actually purchase in 2 clicks.
Yeah.
And the world's only going to become, from a technology standpoint, enabling that opportunity. What do you think about that, and how big do you see that opportunity?
Well, I did 2 shows in that space. We did a show called Fashion Star with Jessica Simpson and Nicole Richie and John Varvatos on NBC. Yeah. And we brought in H&M, Saks Fifth Avenue, and Macy's to be our partners because they actually could activate the purchases. Part of where that broke down was our broadcast partner wanted the funnel to run through them.
Right.
And they didn't have a commerce engine, whereas all of the...
But if you did it today,
you would insist that the brand, you would say to the brands is, see, the biggest thing and where brands have gotten, I think, leverage is the networks say yes can take all the risk, and for taking that risk, they take you to auction every May, and they do it as an auction. If we have the conversation and go in, we're inverting that auction and also keeping all the elements. But I know we have 20 seconds left. My thing to all of you is you're also creative. Our world is super creative. And the more that you have collaborative, creative people integrated into a single mission, the more that you're going to get results. And I just know from watching it expand and my own relationship to it, episodic storytelling is an extraordinary way to get emotional connections. And through those, what you choose to do with them can be thought through in a partnership uniquely and I think very dynamically.
All right, we got 3 zeros right there.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Louis.
Good job, buddy.
Thank you, buddy.
Yeah.